Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. It's Sunday night, October 20, and we're here to look at life through a biblical lens and generally solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. The Bible Forum is a ministry of alternatives, biblical counseling, and education. It's a non-profit corporation, 501c3. Your donations to this, what I consider worthy cause, would be greatly appreciated. Would help to continue the ministry. Everything is tax deductible, and you can do it through PayPal, or you can mail a check. If you email me at thebibleforum@gmail.com, I'll give you an address. Or you can just click the donate button on the Bible Forum website, thebibleforum.net. We've got a lot of things to talk about this week, things that have happened. If you do not get the email, you don't know what those things are. I can't take the time to go through them. So if you would like to know the schedule, you'd like to know the topics ahead of time, shoot me an email, thebibleforum@gmail.net, and we'll get you a weekly update, a letter that I send out every Saturday afternoon, just outlining the kinds of things that are going to be happening. The first article that I want to share with you, I've entitled, interestingly, No, I Didn't Watch the Democrat Debate. And I say it that way because I've said it to you for years now. Everybody on TV, everywhere you turn around, they're always talking about these folks as being Democratic. And they have very seldom been Democratic. They are Democrats, and the things they do are Democrat things. They're not Democratic things. I'm beginning to think that the whole terminology thing is deliberate to subliminally put into my system that they're the ones that are Democratic, and they certainly are not. I don't follow the Democrat debate any more than I follow the workings of the Politburo. For those of you who were educated by the state and only get your news from television or from tweets, the Soviet Politburo is the supreme policy-making body of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. So I didn't hear Ron Reagan's 30-second spot paid for by atheists who seek to recruit supporters. I had to read about it. What did he say? He said, "Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government." Time out. That began in 1776. If you read the documents, founding documents, you find Bible verses splattered through the whole thing. Appeals to the God of heaven and so forth. But I digress. He went on to say, that's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom From Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. It is not the largest, most effective association of atheists. It's probably the only association of atheists that are focused in the way this particular one is. So he asks that we please support the Freedom From Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell. This is what you get from people who are completely focused on themselves. They don't know a whole lot. They don't believe very much of the Bible or of anything seriously important. They didn't think up or learn from those who did, and now they want to be left alone to be and to do whatever they wish. And of course, I would give them that if they just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone if you leave me alone. But this is not only a definition of God rejectors, but of anti-social bigotry. You see, a bigot is one who is strongly partial to his own group, religion, race, or political orientation, and is also intolerant of all those who differ. Now, I know this definition is applied to Bible Christians, but therein lies the rub. You see, this demeaning epithet is a sword with two edges. It cuts both ways. Something secularists and atheists, not to mention uneducated Christians, refuse to admit. Unless you've been living in a van down by the river, you know what a deep fake is. We hear the deep fake issue popping up all the time. Deep fake videos are becoming increasingly easy to make and harder than ever to detect. At least the experts say that. Recently, CNN, I believe, broadcast a report from the battle in Syria with Turkey invading that particular country. Coupled with that report were videos showing Turkey's bombardment of the area. Only it wasn't. The film was from a U.S. base in Kentucky 2 years ago, where men were apparently training on our own long-range weapons. How many other news reports are fake? We, you, and I have no idea. And we have very little means by which to separate the real from the fake. And I believe this situation is going to continue as we march forward toward Armageddon. As deep fake videos are used to spread misinformation quickly around the world, there are fears that more effort is going into developing deep fake generating tools than into detection. An EU tech policy analyst at the Center for Data Innovation warned that there is a growing imbalance between technologies for detecting and producing deep fakes, and that this means there's a lack of tools necessary to efficiently and effectively tackle the problem. She warned, quote, humans are no longer able to spot the difference between deepfakes and the real thing, and so are unable to stop weaponized fake news from spreading. She went on to say debunking disinformation is increasingly difficult, and deepfakes cannot be detected by other algorithms easily, at least not yet. She said you can do some statistical analysis, but it does take time. For instance, it may take 24 hours before you would realize that the video you're looking at is actually fake. In the meantime, the video could very well have gone viral. She added that simply bringing in laws banning or regulating deep fakes is unlikely to be enough, and that more understanding is needed by politicians of the technology. This week, a CNN insider was set to blow the whistle through something called Project Veritas. He will release dozens of recordings made of officials at the highest levels of CNN, revealing a political agenda, a bias, and misconduct that is hidden from public view. This series of tapes, which we think will be the biggest story for the year for Project Veritas, blends two extraordinary series of events: a brave insider secretly recording at work, and a hard-hitting piece of hidden camera muckraking into one of the supposed most trusted names in news. So in a country governed by public opinion, and where public opinion is largely governed by the press, the question becomes, isn't it critical to understand what governs the press? And this is why Project Veritas will be exposing CNN this week. The last video I saw was video number 3. I guess number 4 is already out, maybe today, yesterday, or today. But if you watch these videos, it is hard to believe that any of these men and women who are being filmed are going to keep their job. At a UN General Assembly meeting in Geneva last Friday, the United Nations filled 14 new seats on the Human Rights Council. Members of the Council are tasked with working to uphold and promote human rights around the world. So what countries would you expect to see on this council? Would it surprise you to know that at least 9 members of this committee are human rights violators? The nations that they represent. And if it does surprise you, then you don't know anything about the United Nations. Last week, this vote was taken by the General Assembly. It filled 14 new seats on the committee, electing human rights violating nations Burundi, Egypt, Rwanda, Cuba, Venezuela, China, India, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to this 47-member body. This represents almost 1/3 of the committee, not counting the nations who are already on the committee who would probably be human rights violators in their own right. The Washington Examiner columnist Tom Rogan also noted that simultaneously with the vote, the United Nations Twitter feed was proclaiming its struggle against child poverty. That's where we are. Have you bought into the renewable energy scam? That's what it is. Maybe you bought an electric car. Have you had to replace the main battery yet? If so, you may have to take out another loan. I work for Hendrick Motors part-time, and I watch people bring cars in, and every once in a while one of these cars comes in, and when they find out how much it's going to cost to replace that main battery, some of them have to sit down. It just never occurred to them that it would wear out that quickly or that it would cost that much. Renewable energy advocates have claimed for decades that solar and wind power are the future, and that the future is right around the corner. Well, I would suggest that maybe it's not. Not yet. The facts are that while there's no doubt that wind and solar energy capacity has grown rapidly over the last 30 years, for example, wind power has grown by an average of 24% a year since 1990. Solar has grown by 46% per year over that same period. But does it really matter? Well, the answer is no. Renewable energy as a concept is irrelevant. And the experts tell us it will remain irrelevant for the foreseeable future. You see, wind and solar energy are simply inferior to fossil fuels and nuclear power. Period. It's the back to nature crowd that brought us wind and solar power promises. But did you know that wind turbines produce only 0.46% of global energy? Despite 30 years of government subsidies, hundreds of billions in direct investment in green technologies, wind power is still useless and will remain useless due to limited potential efficiency gains. They're restricted by the BETS limit and land space requirements. You see, we would need to cover an area the size of the British Isles with wind turbines just to meet our annual growth in energy consumption. There's not simply enough land available, and that doesn't consider the hidden systemic risks. Secondly, burning feces and wood produces more energy than wind and solar combined. According to the International Energy Agency's 2016 Key Renewables Trends report, Wind, solar, and tidal energy combined met just 0.81% of the Earth's aggregated energy demands. And yet here we are constantly being told that renewable energy makes up a much larger percentage than that. Why is there this disconnect? Well, because green energy advocates mislead the public by either talking about electric energy or implying that renewable energy means solar and wind energy. But the facts aren't on their side. Electrical energy only represents 1/5 of global energy consumption. The vast majority is consumed as fuel for transportation, heating, cooking. Green energy advocates also imply that wind and solar energy make up a large portion of global energy consumption by implying that they dominate the renewable energy sector. But that's not even remotely true. While 13.6% of the world's energy comes from renewable sources, the vast majority, 72.8%, is just people in developing countries burning wood, charcoal, and dung for energy. Thirdly, we need 7.2 times the Earth's worth of rare minerals just to make it worthwhile to switch to solar energy. Photovoltaic cells require a staggering variety of rare earth minerals to build, one of the most important of which is silver. Given current technology and assuming 20% efficiency, we need to cover an area the size of Spain in solar panels just to generate enough electricity to meet our global demands by 2030. That's a lot of land, which would be better off used for farming or preserved, for that matter. But even if we wanted to build that many solar panels, we couldn't. There's simply not enough silver in the world. Here are the numbers very quickly. Each standard 1.8 square meter uses 20 grams of silver. There are 1 million square meters in a square kilometer. That means we'd need 11.1 million grams or 11.1 tons of silver per square kilometer of solar panels. Spain is 506,000 square kilometers in area, which is how much area you'd need to cover. And that means that 5,616,600 tons of silver would be required to build enough solar panels to power the world. That happens to be 7.2 times more than we have or that exists that we know of. Thus far, humans only have mined or have access to a total of 777,275 tons of silver. In fact, if we mined all the silver on the Earth's crust, there still wouldn't be enough to make the transition to 100% solar power, even if solar panels became 4 times as efficient, 80%. We still couldn't do it. Solar power is a dead end. The point here is that renewable energy won't power the future. The renewable energy industry greatly overstates its progress, downright lies about solar and wind energy being the way of the future. It's like the solar power salespeople who come to convince you to put solar cells on your roof. And yes, you will save electric costs. But when the electric power grid goes down, can you say hurricane, you're going to be just as dark as the rest of us, because all your solar power is being sent to the electric company. Unless, of course, you pay a good number of dollars to get a battery to store energy for emergencies. But they tell me that the best on the market only lasts 6 hours. So in a hurricane, you're probably not going to be any better off than I am. But you're going to feel better about yourself because you're saving the environment. That's a good thing. It's just not what the salesman led you to believe. In Latin class, there was a phrase that we were taught to learn, and it's something maybe we ought to think about today. The phrase is caveat emptor. It's Latin for let the buyer beware.